Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. If you would, somebody would let me know that you can hear me, that would be awesome. And you can see my screen. You click way too loud. That might be somebody saying they can hear me. Cool, so it sounds like people can hear me. You can hear me and see my screen. Awesome, thank you very much. All right, we got about 2 minutes left to go before we get this started. We'll be back in just a minute. So we're gonna give it another minute or two here before we get started. Okay, I've got 10 o'clock my time, which is 7 a.m. in the Pacific Coast. And I think, what is that, like 2 GMT or UTC or whatever you want to call it. I guess we're about ready to go ahead and get started here. So this, first of all, thanks for showing up. Everyone should be able to see my screen. You should be able to hear me. There is a way that you can actually raise your hand in the chat. I can see people are actually telling me that they can see and hear, so that's good. So everything's going. Let me go ahead and first explain, what we're doing here. I'll go through it in just a minute, and I also want to give you a little bit of a kind of an overview on the Zoom client, because it's a little bit different than what we're used to doing for those of you who are new here. So this is the first of two, what we're calling the summer camp calls. The first call that we have here that we're doing, these are stand-ins for the JavaScript and SharePoint Framework community calls that are usually held by Microsoft and the SharePoint Patterns and Practices group. You're probably familiar with them. Patrick Rogers and Vesa Juvonen are the two that generally run these, and they record them. I will explain kind of why we're doing this in just a minute. But it is being recorded. This is being recorded, and it also will be posted to the YouTube channel, the SharePoint Patterns and Practices YouTube channel. I'm 90% sure I'm 90% sure that is the case, and that will be published. Before we get too deep into this, I want to make sure that everyone understands how this works. We're using Zoom for the client. So I know in the past, we've always used the Skype for Business to conduct these calls. I use Zoom for my business, and that's why I'm hosting it here, making it a little bit easier for everybody to hear. Vesa just confirmed too that we're going to be doing stuff on YouTube. So let me first, one little thing just to kind of highlight with this that's a little bit different from how Skype works. You have the Zoom client that you have up and running. You have the ability to just do a chat the same way that you do inside the Skype for Business client. And you can also view the screen share that I'm doing as well. I can see some people have already figured out how the chat works. There's a button where you can hit to open up the chat. Please feel free to go ahead and pop that up. You can actually strip it off into its own little window if you want to see it as well. The one thing I would just ask is, if you look in the Zoom client at the bottom where you go to type your message, I've got a big green arrow pointing down to this thing where it says all panelists and attendees. There are two options. You can post a message just to the panelists, and there's a message that you can post to the panelists and attendees. I'm the only panelist right now, so if you send one to the panelists, I'm the only one that's going to see it. And if I'm doing the presentation, just like the rest of the other SharePoint Patterns and Practices special interest groups and community calls that we do, I may not be able to stay on top of the chat while I'm going through some stuff. And that's where, if you post a message to me, you may not get an answer. It's probably better if you post it to all panelists and attendees, let everybody see it, let everybody jump in. If you need to send a private message to me, then you can, obviously you see there's a way that you can do that. Okay, now that's the housekeeping stuff. It's all out of the way. The other thing too is that this also does a really good job. Zoom does a really good job of delivering these kind of webinars and stuff. So I'm big fan of this client and everything. Let's spare all of the requests going, oh, I mean, if you do like Zoom, hey, that's great. But let's not do the whole, oh, we should start using Zoom for the SharePoint patterns and practices calls. That's not going to happen. Microsoft has a great solution that is for Microsoft Teams. And eventually, as Bess has said, we're going to be moving these calls to Microsoft Teams once they have the support for a couple little features, specifically being able to have the notion of presenters and attendees so that some random person that joins can't just hijack and start showing stuff on their screen. So it is going to eventually be there. I believe that they're going to start doing that in August. They're going to start using Microsoft Teams, but we'll come back to that in just a minute. So what are we going to do in the agenda from today? I'm going to do my best to keep the exact same kind of format that Vesa and Patrick Rogers have done in the past, where I'm going to do a couple of updates on the different projects that we have related to the SharePoint Patterns and Practices group. And then in addition, I've got a quick little demo that I'm going to do. In the next call, we're going to have another one of these summer camp calls I think in 2 weeks. And for that, I definitely would like to reach out. And if you've got an idea for a demo, I would love to invite you to join in. To be honest, this one kind of came together a little bit quick at the end. And I wasn't exactly sure how well that was going to work with having somebody else join in and do a demo. And so I didn't want to risk it for this first one. Maybe at the very end, we can, if we have some time, I'm happy to go through and to open it up as well. If someone does have a demo, just send me something in the background. But please just, if you have an idea for a demo, please feel free to go ahead and post it. What I'm going to do for the demo, though, is I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on the issue list that we have for SPDevDoc, some changes that we've made to the issue list, some improvements that we've made. Nothing dramatic, but something that is going to be, I guess, in honor of Vesa, nothing dramatical, but stuff that is going to be, just to make you aware of. And I see someone's got a question there about something wrong with the new invite for the SharePoint Framework SIG calls. The other ones work, but the SharePoint Framework one doesn't work. It doesn't add anything to the calendar. The button for that is missing. We will look into that. Okay, so that's the agenda today. So let's go. Why are we doing something a little bit different? Why do we have this one-off? And I'm really glad that 30 people so far have figured out that things are a little bit different this time. Hopefully we'll be able to get up to over 100 or 200 like we do for the special interest group calls, but we'll see. Apparently I don't have as much of a draw as the Microsoft calls. So what's going on? Why are we doing this? So in the last call, or the last two calls, Vesa and Patrick have shared that the SharePoint development community activities, specifically the 3 scheduled calls that are done, there's a monthly call and there's 2 bi-weekly calls that happen. Microsoft is taking the month of July off. And the reason for this, it's pretty simple. Most of the people that are running these calls are, they're different family vacations and stuff, and just the stars did not align to have somebody be able to host the call. And from the Microsoft side, not only do they have to host the call, somebody from Microsoft has to be there to host the call, but then someone also has to be there to start the recording for it. And they weren't gonna, nobody was gonna be there. And so they just said, you know what, it's gonna be easier. Let's just shut it down for the month of July. A lot of people are on vacations as well. And we'll just start up again in August where they will have new renewed updates. So what we're doing this time is we said, hey, let's make sure that we actually have something that people can join if they want to join. And so that's why I said, well, I can volunteer my account that I have to host these calls, which is, we're doing this right now to make sure that we didn't I didn't want people to get confused that this wasn't a Microsoft hosted thing. I mean, yeah, the slides look like their stuff. Well, the slides are their slides. To make sure that people aren't confused that this is not a Microsoft hosted thing. This is strictly a community thing. I'm doing this as a community person. I didn't steal the slides. They were borrowed. We're calling them the summer camp calls. So what we're doing here is we're doing 2 of these calls. One of these is going to be today, on July the 3rd, and one of them is on July 18th. Now, what I tried to do is I tried to pick the exact same schedule that we were used to doing for the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript special interest group calls, where we did this every other Thursday. Well, the real schedule should have been for tomorrow, but here in the United States, we've got a big holiday, July the 4th, and we were planning on where most people are, or like for me, I'd be on my, out with my family, and so I wasn't gonna be able to host it, so I took the liberty of saying, you know what, if I'm hosting it, we're gonna move it to the 3rd. So that's why we're doing one today. The next one is on July 18th. That's a Thursday. That's roughly 2 weeks from tomorrow. And they're both held at the exact same time that we usually hold them. So I tried to keep things as consistent as we normally do. How can you learn more about, where are the calls and everything and the different invites for them? The link that I have there, I saw David Warner posted this in the chat just a minute ago. A link to the community calls is shown there on the slide. If you go to that location, which is pretty easy, if you just go to the SharePoint development docs, and on the left-hand side, down towards the bottom of the table of contents navigation, you'll see a community link. And then in there's a deeper link for community calls. You'll see 2 sections. Usually there's one, now there's 2. The first one is the official Microsoft calls that the Patterns and Practices group hosts. That's the one that's going to have the updated links for the calls going beyond August. I see that someone is already, Christian and Vess have already gone back and forth that there's a bit of an issue with one of the invites. Microsoft is going to look into that. But then we've added in another section with invites to these calls as well, the summer camp calls. So welcome you to join. Please socialize them, let the world know. Hopefully we can get a nice, good crowd showing up on July 18th. Or start tweeting about it right now and tell people they're missing out. Okay, so a couple things here, different opportunities to participate in the Patterns and Practices, both the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group. If you want to do a demo, let us know. Or maybe you want to build a web part, maybe you want to build an application customizer or something provisioning. Anything that you can create, reach out to us on Twitter, through the standard social channels that we have. Reach out to us on Twitter, let us know that you're interested and doing something. It helps if you can, if you can, put as much of a description around what you want to end up demoing with the SharePoint framework as possible. If you can, what's the value add? What do you have to offer there? If you have maybe if you want to do that as like a 2 or 3 minute screencast of you just explaining, here's what I want to show, that's great. That helps. We just try and keep things, try to avoid from doing things that are overtly commercial and saying, here's the product that we build and we sell it for this. We don't want to do stuff like that in a community call. Same deal with like anything that's just general patterns and practices stuff. Are you working with the Patterns and Practices JavaScript library? Are you working with the Office 365 the CLI? Are you working with the SharePoint Framework Reusable Controls, both the ones for the property pane or for web parts? Or are you working with the community generator that we have for Yeoman that Stefan Bauer has worked on and done so much great work around? Those are great demos. All those things would be fantastic. Please feel free to go ahead and submit to these. They would be absolutely awesome. The next thing is about how do you want to contribute? Do you want to contribute in terms of with the Patterns and Practices group and around SharePoint? Reporting issues, letting us know with things that you see, something you think is wrong, an issue in the documentation. Hey, if you see an issue in the documentation and you can fix it, submit a pull request. That would work. That would be absolutely awesome as well. That helps it too. That helps us as well. I'll go a little bit into that. I'll show you some of the examples of some stuff that we've done recently to make things a little bit better. And I've specifically made some changes to the labels, and I think it is going to make things a little bit better for us. And then again, give us some feedback. Do you like these calls? Should I completely scrub the second summer camp call because I absolutely am terrible as a webcast host? My finish is terrible. Do we have documentation gaps? What kinds of things can be there? Let us know what you think. Constructive criticism is always welcome. It's the best way to learn on what things are going on what things are working or are not working. Let us know what you do really like about stuff too. It's kind of hard when you do these things and you kind of broadcast stuff and people consume. Hey, that's fine. We're not trying to make money off these things, but getting some sort of feedback, what things resonate, even if it's something that you think is good. Let us know that things are good there, because if we don't see people saying, it's been classic, anything. If you don't see people telling you or get feedback that says, hey, this is a great thing that you guys are doing, or hey, this documentation is great, or this special interest group is fantastic. If you don't hear those things, then maybe when we're trying to figure out, planning things in the future, we're like, well, nobody really says they like it, so we may just go ahead and cut it. If there's nothing there, we don't really have any data points. So let us know if you like stuff. Let us know if you don't like stuff. Let us know if, I don't know, just let us know stuff. All right, so let's first dive into SharePoint Framework stuff. Now, it says the latest from SharePoint Engineering. I am not, as a disclaimer, I do not work for Microsoft. I'm not in SharePoint Engineering. I don't have anything new to share here. This is a rehash of the stuff that has already been presented at the last special interest group. For those of you who are new to the call, this is not, I'm not going to announce anything in here, okay? It's not my role. First of all, a couple things. If you want to go through and you want to learn more about the SharePoint development, you want to learn more about the documentation, or you want to dive into the documentation, I got a quick little aks.ms link, a short link. If you go to spdev-docs, that will take you to the SharePoint development documentation. You can find SharePoint Framework docs. You can find the older development models documentation. There's things about site designs and site scripts. There's all kinds of docs that are in there. If you want to see previous videos that have been done, both recordings of the different special interest group calls, different demos, different, I think with Vesa and Waldeck do their Dev Weekly podcast or video cast, video blog, whatever you want to call it. That is also posted up there. If you go to aka.ms/spdev-videos, this is where the recording of this call is going to go as well. And then also for the SharePoint development issues, if you go to aka.ms/spdev-issues, that will take you to the SPDevDocs issue list. Now that issue list is for like general SharePoint development issues that don't fall into another bucket. And what I mean by that is, like, we have, what you'll start to see, you may have already seen this already, but certain projects that have their own repositories in the either patterns and practices or the SharePoint organization on GitHub. If we have a repo that has a specific project and you post something to the SPDevDocs issue list, we may transfer that issue over. If it's in the same organization, then we can transfer the issue from this issue list to another one. So a good example of that is the provisioning stuff. You may have seen a bunch of issues disappear from the provisioning or from this SPDevDocs issue list, and they've all been moved over to the provisioning repo, because there's a whole team that kind of is involved with that and with the provisioning project, and it makes more sense to have those issues over there. Some issues though can't be transferred, and that's simply because they're in different orgs. So I believe, like, for example, the CLI, the Office 365 CLI, and I believe the PnPjs is also in the PnP org. And so we can't as easily transfer those issues over. But what we end up doing is we will, post a message saying, hey, that makes more sense over here, and then we close the issue. So we don't we're trying to keep things very, all the like issues together. Okay, so a couple of things too. If you're not familiar with this, the SharePoint Engineering has a, it shows the, it has a training package related to SharePoint Framework. These are 9 different modules that are provided by the SharePoint engine by Microsoft for kind of self-paced, hands-on training for the SharePoint Framework. And it goes everything from doing your very first SharePoint Framework component to learning how to build web parts, extensions, working with content in SharePoint, like working with the SharePoint REST API, working with third-party APIs like the Microsoft Graph, or calling an Azure AD secured API. I think in that one we actually call we actually call the Microsoft Graph because it's secured with Azure AD, but we also have one that's specific for the Microsoft Graph as well that we have, another project as well. How to get a quick little ramp up on how to work with React, how to work with the Fabric React components, deployment things, and then also working with Microsoft Teams within the context of SharePoint Framework. These are all things that, I mean, I've worked on these with Vesa, and I made sure that this content has all been refreshed. We refresh it every quarter. It recently got refreshed in the last couple weeks, which means that somebody has had eyes on this, and all the stuff has been tested, and we made sure that everything still works, and it's all using the latest version of the SharePoint Framework as it is today, SharePoint Framework version 1.8.2. And we'll do that again in the next couple months as well. We do that once a quarter to make sure this stuff is always current, unlike the previous ones we had, which had gotten a little bit outdated and long in the tooth. So you can learn more about that at aka.ms/SPFx training. You'll find a hands-on lab, you'll find some slides, and you'll find a link to a screencast of someone presenting the slides in the demo if they were standing up at a user group doing it. So these are great for self-paced learning. They're great for you to take to your local user groups and use them in your own presentations. The demos inside the screencast and in the slides, that's the actual result of the exercise in a hands-on lab that's in the same module. So you can do the presentation. Someone says, well, how did you build that web part? I mean, you showed it to me, but how did you build it? And you're like, go do the lab. There's a hands-on thing. You can do it yourself. Okay, so what's next? What's next with the SharePoint Framework? All right, so the next thing that we have is SharePoint Framework version 1.9. This is latest that Microsoft has shared. This is planned to be released on July the 9th. What is that? Next Tuesday. So keep your eye out for that. What is that going to do? What stuff is this going to have? There's a couple things that they've talked about that's going to include in it. So one thing is the library component, which was introduced as a dev preview capability. That's going to be released to GA in 1.9. They're also doing some work around Azure AD and Graph API. What they're doing is there's been some issues. If you've noticed this inside the issue list, some people who have been working with the Microsoft Graph, really anything that requires an access token, an OAuth token, to call a secured third-party endpoint. So that's going to be anything that uses the Azure AD HTTP client object and the Microsoft Graph client. Both of them use the same infrastructure to obtain an access token. People who have been using those in SharePoint, no problem. People who've been trying to use those same things inside of a SharePoint Framework web part that's running as a tab inside of Microsoft Teams, it works in the browser, it doesn't work in the clients. And then it also has had issues where these components that have been created and been deployed, where we're having issues with them also within the SharePoint mobile client. Microsoft has been working on that. They've been working on fixes for that. There is a workaround that we have that's listed inside the issue list. However, they're working to clean that stuff up and address that challenge. That should be in 1.9. Also, we've noticed that there are some issues with the isolated web part model, specifically the support with them when you're running an isolated web part as a tab inside of Microsoft Teams. Well, that's going to get fixed in 1.9. And then there's some also improvements with Microsoft Teams integration that they are adding in. What details of those? I don't know. I'm just the messenger on this case. They say the next update or the next release for SharePoint Framework is going to be on August the 13th. Is that 1.9.1? Is that 1.10? I don't know. We'll see where that goes. Other things that they're working on under the covers, that are behind the scenes, being able to do the same thing that we can do with web parts and Microsoft Teams as custom tabs. They're looking to do that same kind of an infrastructure with Office add-ins. So you'll be able to leverage your SharePoint Framework development inside of Office add-ins as well. Improvements around content security policy, a CSOM.NET standard release, a story for a store option for your SharePoint Framework solutions, for being able to have a better way to sell and distribute your customizations. Additional content extensions for modern pages. This is kind of cool. Think of this as like a significant improvement around SharePoint Framework application customizers. I don't know how much, I can't remember exactly how much Microsoft has shared with that, so I'm not entirely sure what they've shared there. So I'm going to leave that kind of just as is. And then also improvements around the app catalog and deployment story as well. Oh, and there goes Parker doing a dance down the road. Thankfully, no cars are coming along, so he doesn't get squished. Also, one thing that a bunch of us have been working on are a bunch of getting started videos that are coming soon. These are going to be kind of drip released over the summer. And the idea here is that they're all less than 10 minutes. That's good to see that they're 10 minutes because I thought at first they were supposed to be 5 minutes. And so far my videos have been like 10. Let's say that they're less than 10-ish minutes because I know one of mine is 11. The idea here though is you don't have to go through some big training and all this stuff. If you're just like, you know what, let me see a really quick demo of something working and show me how you did it. That's what these are for. And so it's supposed to be something really quick. So like I did one on working with the Microsoft Graph, and I did one on something else that I just now forgot. But there's a bunch of them that we've done. We got stuff around site designs that have been done and a whole bunch of other things. There's a long list. So expect to see more of this stuff get dripped out in the coming weeks throughout the summer. Okay, so now look at that rabbit. Now let's talk about some stuff related to different components that are out there that we have. So what things do we have that are updated that we can share with you? So around the PnPjs library, the latest release that we have for that, we have flying bunnies. The latest release we have for that is 1.3.4 that was released on July the 12th. V2 updates. So Patrick asked me to share some stuff with this. They're doing a lot more updates. Work is continuing throughout the summer on the V2 of PnPjs. You can get involved by going to this link that you see that's listed here. That's where they're working on the updates and sharing their progress all out in the open. You can see the stuff that's going on around PnPjs. It's a really great, it's a good library for accessing SharePoint as like a Fluent-based API to access like SharePoint REST, but then also talking to the Microsoft Graph and other things as well. All right, those are the big pieces that you see. You can learn more about it if you go to pnp.github.io/pnpjs. I can see David just posted something. Would love love to get more people involved that want to help. You can learn more about about V2 if you go to the link that you see there in the chat, github.com/pnp/pnpjs/blob/dev v2/readme.md. All right, Office 365 CLI, let's cover this. The latest release for this is version 1.22.0. I don't believe that there's been a release. My understanding is there's no new release since the last call that we had. There's a couple commands that were added in this most recent release for setting the SharePoint home site, setting teams, team settings, and then retrieving the Office 365 tenant ID by just using the domain name, being able to get the ID there. There's a bunch of V2 work that is being done on the CLI, and you can learn more about that. It's kind of a simplified login is one of the big focuses of that, as well as a bunch of reorganized and restructured commands. You can get that by installing a global package using npm install --global or just -g, and then saying @pnp/office 365 CLI. That'll give you the 1.22.0 version. If you put the @next on the end of it, that'll give you the next version, or the V2 version of it. All right, let's talk about reusable components. I love the little clip art in the bottom right-hand corner. It's like those people are reusable, so we can pick them up and we can put them wherever we want to use them. So I'm going to try and grab the guy on the left there to do my my financial stuff. It looks like he's kind of more studious, although the red pants, the black shirt, that's a little edgy. So I'm not sure if I want my finance guy doing that. Anyway, back to the regularly scheduled program. Trying to channel my inner Chris Kent humor there, which is probably doing a very poor job. We're missing the warrior horses today. I wish I had a slide that was just for warrior horses. If you guys don't know what that joke is about the warrior horses, then you're totally missing out on these calls. Okay, so this is a project that Elio Struff is behind, or it's actually a pair of projects that Elio Struff is behind. What he's done is there are some reusable controls that you can use inside of your SharePoint Framework projects. Specifically, these are for web parts. And what we have here is that you've got one set for components that you can use inside your React-based SharePoint Framework web parts. And then there's another project you can use where you can use the components inside of any kind of web part because they're designed to only be used inside the property pane. So the property pane controls, the idea there is that the controls that we get out of the box from the SharePoint Framework, they work. I mean, they're text boxes, and they are all kinds of things, text boxes and drop-down boxes and toggles and links and stuff like that. But there's no logic, there's no smarts behind them. And what the property pane controls do is we have controls like the ability to pick a color using like the classic swatch color option, or putting in a hex value or the RGB value. Or one of my favorites is you drop in the list control, and it will automatically use the existing REST APIs to figure out what lists that you have in the current site. So you can just pick from a list, and it saves you from having to write all that business logic of initializing the drop-down control to pick a specific list. So these are good for any web part. It doesn't matter if you're using a web framework or not, because everything that goes inside the property pane is React-based. These are all React-based as well, so they work really well. The second control or the second list of, or the second project you see listed there, the controls React version. What that is for those of you who are building web parts that are React-based web parts that, and you can use similar kind of controls like a map control. There's a configure control as well for like a placeholder. So if you add a web part to the page and it needs a lot of setup stuff that, say you maybe need to pop up in a wizard, or maybe you need to go work with the property pane. That one that you see there in the middle about configure your web part, that's the placeholder control. So when someone adds it to the page, it's kind of like the image control, the image web part. When you add to the page, you got to pick an image, otherwise it's kind of useless. So that's all set up as well. So you can learn more about those at these two links that you see there on the slide. The versions for those, there has not been a new version since the last Patterns and Practices call. Yeah, so those are the new versions, or those are current versions. Now let me talk a little bit about the Yeoman Generator, the Patterns and Practices Yeoman Generator that Stefan Bauer has done. This is again, similar to the last ones. This is the same version 1.8.0 is the same version that was available during our last call. And what this is a superset of what we already can do with the Yeoman Generator for SharePoint, or the SharePoint generator that we have for Yeoman, that we use for SharePoint Framework projects that Microsoft provides. What this does is, this is a generator that inherits from the Microsoft one, and what it does is it allows you to do a lot more stuff to your project. So it can do some setup for things like set up a templates for your project for if you're using Vue, or if you're using Knockout or Handlebars or Angular, not just React and Knockout, which we normally get from a SharePoint Framework project, but it does a whole lot more stuff as well. It has the ability to set up things, set testing up in your project. It has some CI and CD stuff that's built into it, allowing you to add jQuery to it as well. There's a whole lot of stuff that this adds to your project. This is not a replacement for the one that Microsoft provides. Because when you install this, it is using the one that Microsoft provides. It's just adding in extra stuff after Microsoft does the provisioning of their project. So think of this, I like to think of this, and I hope that Stefan doesn't take offense to this, because I think of this as a good way to describe it. To me, this generator is like a macro for your existing project, for the other generator. You install the generator, You have the original generator, which creates the project that you need. And then this one can do a bunch of other stuff in addition to it. The nice thing is that when you run this generator, the PnP SPFx generator, it automatically runs the Microsoft one first based on the questions that you ask or you answer. And then it will do a bunch of other stuff. So like today, if I told someone, here's how you do real testing with React, because we don't have that by default inside of the React template web part project in a SharePoint framework, from the SharePoint framework generator we get from Microsoft, I would say go first create your React-based web part project. Once that's done, you need to install Jest, and then you need to install all these other dependencies, or there's a preset that I've created that I put out there that you can use depending on the version of React you're using. You then need to install this preset and then go make this configuration file and then go modify the package.json file to do these other things. The nice thing is that what this does, it does all that stuff for you. So it makes your life a heck of a lot easier. All right, now that's all I've got for the stuff to kind of give you updates there. Let me run through a quick little demo, and let me do a little, give you an update on some of the things we've done with the SP Dev Docs. So, let me a bigger screen than that. So let's come over here to, oh, there's the doc. So one more, I wanted to show you this, that's right. If you come over here to the SharePoint developer documentation, so I'm just over here at went to the SharePoint Dev Docs, right here at the core and the development piece, down here at the bottom, you see that there's a community link. If I go to community and then click on community, and then over here on the right-hand side, you see we've got two sections, one for community calls and one for summer camp calls. Here's the community calls. Here are the links to the community calls that are available to us. I've been watching a little bit of a back channel conversation as well from when I believe it was Christian W said that there was a problem with these calls, right, not this one, the SharePoint Framework call. Vesa and Patrick Rogers have been looking into it. They've noticed a little something weird, but they're still looking into it. This one, the little bit farther down, these are the calls that I refer to as the summer camp calls. Well, this is the one we're doing right now. This is the one that we'll be doing in roughly 2 weeks. And the community call invites updated to Microsoft Teams, Mandeep, they will be, I think that I'm gonna let Vesa comment on that, or Patrick comment on that. Yeah, so, okay, I'm gonna let Vesa comment on that in the chat, because I can see he's doing that in the chat. He says, okay, so first to Christian, test the SharePoint Framework invite. They just recreated the ACS file and updated the MS links in the background. It should work with any issues, but would love to get confirmation. Download and save your calendar. Should work now. My understanding is also, to Nandi, is that these are also going to be, I think these are the Teams invites. And I believe these are the team. Yes, these are the Teams invites. Cool. So they will be. Okay, so we just need to go back and update the docs so that these say direct Skype link, they'll be direct Teams link. Cool. All right, so that's those. Now, let's come over here to the dev docs. I'm gonna come over here to github.com/SharePoint, so SP dev docs. I never can remember those aka.ms links. Can you click the Skype link? Yep, you bet it. So I'll come over here, let's do this one. I wanna do this one. So click on this and ta-da, there it is. What am I seeing here? There we go. So when it's time, so right now you go to this, and when it's time, Vesa saying that like in August, they will, they're gonna update the aka.ms to point to the actual Teams invite. So right now they're not the Teams invite, but this is where it is. So there's no changes. They're gonna route the request automatically. Got it. Cool. Actually, David, let's not do, we don't want people to go to that link right there. We want everybody to come from here because they're going to change the aka.ms links to point to the right one. Okay. So, all right, there we go. So now let me go back to my docs. Where was I? I was on GitHub dev docs. There we go. Okay. So now this is, let me show you some of the changes we've made to the SharePoint dev docs here. And yeah, I've been busy lately, so I haven't been going through all the triages. Let me show you some of the changes we made. So one of the changes we made, thanks to, is he on the call? I don't know. Vincent, during a recent call, I did a demo on working with the issue list and giving people a little bit of an update on some stuff. One of the bits of feedback we got was, hey, it'd be nice if the descriptions of all of these labels were filled in. So guess what? They're all filled in, or they're all, well, at least the ones that make sense are all filled in, which is most of them. So I got here by seeing the difference for what these things are. Right here on this, where it says the labels right here, I'm just clicking on labels, and I can see a list of all the labels that are available to us. So these areas, these are things like, think of this as like a category. So I'm just going through and explaining what these things are, what you can expect to see from these different items. If I scroll down a little bit, show you some of the changes that we've made. Here's one change that we made. Right here for the SharePoint framework, we've broken up the SharePoint framework to both general and extensions. So we had a bunch of issues, as you can see there. We had a bunch of issues that were just specific to extensions. So what I did was I created a separate label just for extensions, and then moved all those extensions issues over to SharePoint, to this label. All right. If it's not and it's still related to SharePoint framework, then I said I left it in the general thing. Is the chat being recorded as well? Yeah, it's being recorded. I don't know if it shows up in the video, but I definitely get it as a text file, and we can always put that as the, we'll make sure that the chat will be available, or worst case, it'll be linked to in the description of this video when it's posted to YouTube. If ideally though, I'm gonna try and put it as the whole body of the chat. I just don't know if it's gonna get truncated off. Good question though, Tristan. Let's see, so we did that. Here's some of the other stuff that we did. So in the past, I made some changes here on this needs section. So what you'll see here, we've always had this author feedback, which if you recall what author feedback does, it's a way for if someone's posted an issue and then somebody from Microsoft or somebody else says, you know, hey, we need more information, the originating author or the original poster, which you see us referred to as OP, if they need to respond to us and they need to give us additional info, then we will put this needs author feedback. And what that does is that kicks off a workflow that will wait for 7 days for the author to respond. If they don't respond, it will flag the issue as no activity and put a comment in the issue. And then it will, after another 7 days, if they still don't respond, it'll go ahead and automatically close the issue, because apparently it's either the original poster isn't engaging, and so there's really nothing for us to really act on if we need more information. Two changes that I did make though, was that you see here that we have this needs reproduce steps. So we used to have this, a different label that was referring to reproduction, like reproducing the issue, not reproduction, that doesn't sound right. We had another label about giving us a repro of the issue that you're having. I think it said like internal / repro, no repro. It was a little cryptic, and I just said, well, really, you know what it is it's a request for us back to the original poster. And so we changed that label to be needs reproduce steps, and we need to be able to reproduce the issue. And then you can see a list. We went and moved all those issues over to it. And then now we also have another one here where, you know, I do this myself, and we got a couple of people on the core team of the patterns and practices who have rights to be able to label things. Sometimes there's things that, you know, most of the time we can resolve something or we can figure out what the problem is, but sometimes it's like, hey, this isn't me, this isn't something that I can do. And so we need Microsoft to jump in. We need engineering to jump in. We need Vesta to jump in. We need Patrick to jump in. We need somebody to jump in to give their input on it. And so we now have this new label here for needs Microsoft review. So for example, I know that there's one of these issues that's out there is around, where is it? It is this one, this idempotent issue is site scripts. And it was a question that came up about, hey, this doesn't seem to work the way it's intended to, and the docs aren't exactly, they don't tell us what's going on. And so we went through and we were looking at this and said, well, you know, this isn't really something that the community can answer. This is something that the people at Microsoft, the engineers need to say, yes, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's not an issue. The docs are just a little ambiguous. So after we had this little dialogue going back and forth, we ended up saying, well, you know what? This isn't something we can resolve. This is something that they have to do instead. So we tagged it as needs review. Another bit of changes that we had here. Let's see, which ones that we did. I think we did. Here we go. We also broke up the type bug. Instead, we were typing things up as a bug where you can say, someone may see this and go, hey, that's a bug. And it really, we don't know if it's a bug, if it's confirmed a bug from Microsoft, or if it's really, we think it might be a bug. And so what we did was we created two separate labels, one to show that things are, we're not really sure if it's a bug or not. And so we have this bug suspected. And once something is confirmed as a bug, then we go through and we do bug confirmed, and we go through and then lock that up. Periodically, we also go in and look and see if the bug, where we have bug confirmed, these are some nice issues to go through and look up, where you see bug confirmed and working on it, or bug confirmed and tracked. That means that Microsoft is aware of it, they've confirmed it's a bug, and they now have something on their own internal system where they have an issue and it's been assigned to an engineer and they're watching it, they're gonna manage it. Or, hey, look, they're actually fixing the problem now, we're working on it. And once they've rolled the problem out, then they can say, hey, it's been fixed, or it's being fixed in the next drop. And generally what fixed next drop means, it means the next version of the SharePoint framework is gonna include this fix, or the fix is a server-side thing that is starting to roll out through the target release springs and the standard release as well. Periodically then over time, we look at the things that are listed as fixed and fixed next drop. We confirm that those things have been fixed, and then we go in and we'll close those issues. These things right here, where you see the status track, these are important that we don't close these. Both you and the community don't close your own issue if it's listed as tracked. Same thing on our side as well. We don't close them. And the reason why is because if we close them on the GitHub side that's tracked, then now the associated issue on the internal Microsoft tracking system, like in their own issue tracker in Azure DevOps, now you've got this orphaned issue, and that's not good. So if you do see something that should be closed, it's all fixed, then put a comment in there and just say, hey, this thing has been fixed, and call out me, or call out this, or call somebody out and let them know that, hey, this has been fixed. And then what we do on our side behind the scenes is we just make sure that Microsoft knows, hey, this issue can be closed, but you guys probably want to close yours internally. And when you do that, then close the issue. So we don't do that for them. So these are all some of the big changes that we've made with this. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, we are also starting to move things out of this list. So if we see things like this one. So this one right here, this is clearly a provisioning thing. I'm not currently logged in, so I'm gonna do this in just a minute. I'll do this a little bit later, but this guy right here, when I look at this issue, there's an option that we have over here for some people where we can say transfer the issue. And what we'll end up doing is we'll transfer this over to the provisioning repo, so that now it won't be listed inside of this repo, and then the issue still exists. The user will be notified that things got moved around, etc. Things will be in good shape. Okay, cool. I don't see any questions related to that. I am almost out of stuff to show you guys. Actually, I am out of stuff to show you guys. So come on, go full screen again. That is my demo that I had to show you guys. Oh, I'm also working on a wiki page that we will link to in each one of the issues that will cover some of the high value items that I mentioned in the call, in one of these calls. I believe it was like 2 weeks ago, maybe it was 4 weeks ago, where I talked about, how to create a good issue, how to create a good pull request, stuff like that. Right, so we will have a wiki page that shows all that stuff. I wanted to get the labels done first because it's going to essentially be our documentation for that page. Quick reminder here: the next SharePoint Framework and JavaScript special interest group, the summer camp call, will be on July 18th. That's in 2 weeks from tomorrow. The next official SIG meeting is going to be August 1st, 2019. Again, keep checking that page for the most updated links. Invite links that will be available once it's all set. If you want to learn more about the Patterns and Practices group, you go to aka.ms/SPPnP. And now's our time for any open Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, so we've lost some people. If anybody has any questions, though, now would be a good time to go ahead and post them. If not, I'll give another couple minutes. If I don't see anything come in, then we will go ahead and wrap the call up. Any questions, anybody? And the chat's a lot less active. I guess we have a lot fewer people, a lot fewer. I think that's the right term. Oh, look at that. Ryan Healy. People know these things. So the link that you shared, that went to something that doesn't exist, Ryan, on icon form fabric assets. So I don't know. That would be something you would want to go ping the fabric, the Office UI fabric team. I think you want to check it out with those guys. Let's see. You're welcome, Andrew B. Thanks for jumping in. Mike Z, on the SharePoint Framework sample extensions in GitHub, all of them are supposed to work with 3 basic commands: git, bundle, package. No, those aren't the commands. So the commands are, it's going to be, you're going to want to first clone it, and then you should be able to do git build, git bundle, and git package solution. However, all of those projects, as you see here, let me go back to my, open up there. So the ones that you're referring to, Mike, these extensions, so this project, are all of them supposed to work in these samples? You notice over here, look at the date on when these were. So there's some, like this one was updated for the release candidate 1.2. Your mileage will vary. These are samples that have been provided by the community. We have not gone through and made updates to every single one of these to make sure that they're working with the latest version of the SharePoint framework. As you can see, there are quite a few samples that are in here. It's really up to, these are pure community things. So this is, it's not guaranteed that they are going to work right out of the box. Can't say. So the best thing that you can do is just to check out each one, and you may end up needing to go through and to make an update to it. So like over here, if I look at this React MSAL bot and I come into the actual project, this one is using the SharePoint Framework 1.5.1. So that's very old. That is, I believe, early 2017, like February. Oh no, 2018, February or March, ballpark, somewhere around that time. So your mileage may vary. You're right. So you say you found some, you've tried some. I'm not sure if they're supposed to be working with something I'm doing or it's outdated. I would put money on it. It's probably just outdated. You just have to see. There are different ways you can go through it and to try and update these. The Office 365 CLI has a command that you can use to make your life easier to update them. Hey, you want a good community project, good community contribution for PnP? Somebody come in and start going through these projects and start updating them. If there was a button to upgrade all the projects, we would do it in a second. But it's all like this stuff is all community. It's all community-based involvement right now. These are not official Microsoft like samples that are provided. These are all done by the community. So let's see. Couple things, some follow-up here regarding debugging in the local languages by Christian. Let's take a look at that issue really quick. Just share that with everybody else so you can see what we're looking at here. Nope, that's not right. That issue. Cannot use debug locale when in write manifest. Seems that version 1.6 Yeoman Generator is not possible to use debug locale when write manifest. I'm not familiar with this issue. Oh. So it looks like Microsoft is aware of it because it's been listed as tracked. And yeah, so no, I don't have an update to it. Sorry, Christian. I just don't have I don't have an update on it. Patrick, create a button to update all the projects. Yes, we need the big easy button, SPFx easy upgrade. I'll put that on their roadmap. Cool. All right, I don't see any other questions that are posted here, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Please don't forget, we've got another call on July 18th, 2018. I'm going back in time. We got another call on July 18th, 2019. Please check the SharePoint docs for the invite link for that. If you come over here again to the SharePoint docs, go to community. Over here on the summer camp calls, that will be the second call you see right here. If you got an idea for a demo, let me have it. Send something to me. I'd love, we can cut it down a little bit. If you want to have a discussion on something, please jump in and do that as well. You know, I don't want to repeat the same stuff we did at the beginning of the call. I will, but I don't want to repeat the same stuff we did at the beginning of the call. There's a lot of stuff that I'd love to demo as well. And I'm happy to do too, but let's see what everybody else is interested in doing. Best way to do that, get in touch with us. Get in touch with me. I'm on Twitter, just at Andrew Connell. Send me a message and or send me an email, andrew@voitanos.io, and I'm happy to go through and help arrange doing a demo or two. Try and cap it around 2 demos, and then so we have time for Q&A and stuff. So for those of you who are in the United States, happy 4th of July this weekend. Stay safe. And for everybody else in the world, I guess you guys can get back to work tomorrow, because here in the US, almost all of us are taking the day off tomorrow. So with that, everyone have a good time, and I will talk to you soon. And in honor of Vesa, I will say bye-bye.